I'm alive. Hey everyone. I'm Rambro. I'll today I'll be writing a couple of shaders. Um, there is there's a little side game that I want to make that involves making a bunch of like squishy cartoon animals. Um, And so there are two things that I think that I'll want to use. The one is to be able to have my animals be like very squishy, but mainly the sort of middle body piece, so that if they jump around, that their body like does that squash and stretch thing. And then the second one, which I've sort of seen some people do things where it's like sort of a smear where you can move objects around and sort of see parts of the mesh staying behind, that makes it look as if it's like moving super quickly. And that for the most part I've seen with just moving objects. But in the case of something that isn't just a straight object, maybe it's a skinned mesh or something, then it's not nearly as easy. Haha. Hey KB and Odd Circus. Yayo KB asks what this is for. It's just a side project with squishy animals that I haven't actually made yet. So this is sort of the start of it, with a bunch of Unity primitives to pluck out my animals. Okay, so also I had the flu last week and I'm much better, but I'm still coughing sometimes, which sucks. But in case I cough, I apologize beforehand. So I create a new shader file. So for the most part, I want these to be unlit shaders, or at least that's what I'm thinking. I can change it later. Whenever I create a new unlit shader, Unity populates it with a bunch of things, but they're things that I don't find very useful, so I remove them. In particular, they create their the struct, they call that vertex, but some of the Unity functions that you call elsewhere expected to be pos, which is sort of inconsistent, and I think that this just never got changed. Anyway, so I'm just gonna get this to be a much more basic thing to start with, and so this should be a super basic shader that hopefully compiles. I'll apply that to this body. Yeah, your KB asks what actually is a shader. A shader in its most broad form, I guess, is a piece of it's just a program that runs on your graphics card. And so for the vast majority of cases, like almost all cases, it's a little program that takes some data, and that data could be textures, sometimes it's meshes, and it transforms them in some way. It just does something to them, and then puts it on your screen. And so Typically in 3D games, you'd have a model and you'd have some textures, and your shader would take the model from like whatever your output is from your oh gosh, I'm being offered food. I can't say no to this. Marshmallow fish. And it looks like a steak. Oh. Or a footprint. Whatever that is. Okay, I'll save that for when I actually succeed at something here. um yeah, so for the most part, it just takes mesh data and textures, and then does some. Maybe it does lighting, maybe it moves things around, and then it draws it to a screen. So almost everything that you see in a game, or practically everything you see in a game, has some shader involved. It's just if you can write your own, you can start making your shaders do very different things, things that maybe, yeah, Unity might not do out of the box. And Simple Geek says the face mask is weird. It totally is. It is really janky. Francois asks, "What are you using for your live face tracking?" I was searching around for something and ended up finding Lens Studio, which is a Snapchat thing. It's supposed to be a thing that you use to make Snapchat filters. But it's but when you make your filters, you have to submit them to their I don't really use Snapchat, but it's like you have to submit it to their Snap library, and the end result is that like everyone can use it, which would be cool if you made a really good one. But I didn't have the time, I guess. So I just made a really janky one, and instead of submitting it to their store, I'm actually just running Lens Studio in the background and then cropping the capture of its window. Every time I look at this little window and see Rambro winking at me, it is the best thing. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to give it a color just so that it can be the same color as the things around it. So if you put something in properties, you save that file, then you see it popping up here in your inspector. But in order to use it, you also have to declare it as a variable inside your file. Okay. So now I can choose a color and let my little animal be that. Then to the actual squash and stretch part, we want to do that in our vertex part of our shader. So we want to move these vertices around. So inside our vertex struct, there is there's a vertex vector, which is the object space position of our vertices. So you can say add them by their normal position, by their normal direction, and that would puff everything out, which in this case hides the whole thing. So let's give us a strength. Okay, so now we've got a little slider or a strength variable that says how far we want to push these vertices out. And Simple Geek asks, sorry guys, making new game. We're sort of making new games all the time, but just like experimentally. This one, the thinking for it is to make something for Playtopia. It's this festival that we have in Cape Town in, I think it's the beginning of December or end of November, somewhere around there. It's a game festival where there are a bunch of people from South Africa and also from overseas who come and give talks and show off the games we make. And there's usually a party there where there are a bunch of people who play or are exhibiting like multiplayer games. Super Friendship Arcade last year ran a thing there, and it's always super great to have a bunch of people together playing multiplayer games and having fun. So this is sort of with the intention of showing it there, but I mean, I don't know what it'll end up being. The little animal has an equal adorable name. Yes, well, you're very welcome to come up with one. I'm not even sure what kind of animal it is. Okay, so so I don't want the entire animal to be expanding all at the same time. I sort of want the butt and the sort of the front of it to stay roughly the same shape, but have the sort of middle portion be the part that does the jiggly stretches. So I need to find a way to mask that. And I've sort of done this beforehand by creating like my own box that has UVs that for their y coordinate is 0, roughly like past this curve, and 1 just before the end of, well, the start of the next curve there. So this in between portion is between 0 and 1, and then this is like all 0, and this part is all 1. So if I create a mask and just do that like naively, then when I play with the strength thing, you're sort of seeing that happen. I didn't actually clamp them. I need to clamp them. So saturate is a function that just takes whatever you give it and clamps it between 0 and 1. Yeah. So this sort of gives me the behavior that I'm sort of looking for on the back, but on the front doesn't really work. So I need to fiddle with my mask to get that working too. So if I say okay, that's sort of doing it. So the idea would be that when this character gets like, when its legs get further apart, that it's sort of doing this, and then when it goes in, that it does that just automatically. Also, this part could be maybe a bit tighter. Drink some water. Bobby Brown. Little Bobby Brown. So the mask in here is between 0 and 1. If I multiply it by 1 minus something between 0 and 1, then it's like between 0 and 1 times something between 0 and 1, which still gives me something between 0 and 1, but this is not actually gonna, it's not gonna be between 0 and 1 because the 1, so this will be between 0 and a quarter at the moment. So I want to take that and multiply. And that should give me my full strength. Maybe. What does... Maybe that was not the right thing to do. I take that back. Oh yeah. They should be dogs.
Stretchable.
That's what we see. That was Barksdale. He's our, I think, 1-year-old Italian Greyhound puppy. I say our because totally our. Yeah, he lives at the office about, I don't know, half the time. Yeah. Okay. So I think I need to write some code to be able to to tell it where to snap the sort of the ends of that box and to tell it how much to stretch. Okay, I'm gonna eat my fish now. Watching Rambo chew is the best. Sorry about the chewing sounds. So first I'm gonna try and position this thing, position this box so that it's always in the middle of this front pivot and this back pivot. So that would be the front and the back positions added together. And then by 2. Got a missed call from my dad. What poor timing. Okay, so while the game's playing, I move the front back around. Uh, I do get the average position, but the scale needs to change. So let's work on that. Hey, cool. That just worked. I didn't expect it to. So we got the scale, but we also need rotation because otherwise this happens. I can't actually go to Playtopia. They say no under 18. Not recommending that you get a fake ID. um, I believe there will. I'm not certain, but I think I read somewhere that there'd be a like one of the days that would be open to people under 18, but I'm not sure. Ben McInnes asks, when you have a moment, could you elaborate more on how you set up the primitives so that the values on one side will be 0 and the other side will be 1? I can. Oh, I can't. It's not in here, right? I'll just import it. Bounce. Oh gosh, I just reinstalled Blender and my settings are weird. Is this 2.79? Oh, that's why. I've been playing with the 2.8 beta because that's actually the version I want to learn. Blender looks amazing now, and I totally want to use it. Just the last time I used it, the UVs were messed up, so it's like, oh, so close to being amazing. I think this is the new blender. I'll just try, and if it's not, and the UVs are still messed up, then I did download the new update earlier this week. So bam, this is what the UVs look like. So for the most part, you usually want your UVs to be between the sort of 0 and 1 square, but I just side projected it. And then I've got some that is above the 1 and some that's below the 0. But because on the shader I'm clamping these values, all of this becomes 1 and all of this becomes 0. Okay, so I need rotation. That's pretty easy because this thing's Z is down the length of its axis. And if you say transform it, look at, it makes your Z point at something. So it's easy to just say, hey, look at the front pivot. Cool. So that's sort of okay so far. But now I need it so that as I pull it out this way, this sort of strength goes inward, I think. And then when I pull this back like that, then the strength goes up, or something along those lines. So those are things that are in this material. So let's edit that material. What was my float called? Strength. And then some number. I don't know, let's just. Okay, this is not gonna be right, but we can change things. Not 1080p. You mean the stream? You know, the thing about game dev streams is they probably don't need to be 60 frames per second. It could also just not move for a while and then do this and give you a really, really pleasurable experience. Okay, so he looks pregnant with excitement. I'm gonna choose these values. So I think I need some parameters to say to limit how much, especially how much it goes inward, because currently when I pull the strength really low, it's sort of like it sort of goes in and then like is actually inside out there, which looks very unhealthy. Also kind of like a sweet wrapper, I guess. So let's give it okay, and then instead of just saying strength, we can turn our strength into a range and use that side alert. So the mesh is still wrapping in on itself, but because it's unlit, we don't really see it. So I'm gonna pretend that didn't happen. And then the maximum can be something largish. Okay. And then we need to set the scale thing to be some number between 0 and 1. But it should be something where it keeps tending towards 0 at the one end, but maybe never ever reaches it. And then at the other end, at the 1, it also tends to 1 and never reaches that. And we need some math function that looks like that. While I think about what that'll be, I'm gonna eat this sugary meat. Or foot. Like, I'm not sure which it is. Hi Sam. You know maths, don't you? What function looks like this? Yeah. It like goes on forever, but is always between 0 and 1. Sigmoid function. Cool. A10. Arc10 does it, but what are the limits to Arc10? Pi over 2. I think so. So if we use Arc10, Arc10 divided by pi over 2 seems to give me that thing too. I think that's like an easier way to write it out. Thank you. Okay, so I need to put an Arc10 in here somewhere. And the distance, I guess. Okay, but yeah, this definitely won't be right yet. But I just want to see how it behaves so I can. Okay, so if I lock this and I grab the front pivot, so as I move it out further and further, it keeps getting closer and closer to 1. You can see there, but sort of not getting there. And if I bring it in close, it gets closer to 0. So that's kind of good, but it's sort of the wrong way around. So let's minus that. Whoa. That definitely looks weird. Oh, right. It shouldn't be minus, it should be 1 minus. Dodge the cough. Yeah. I did that all for you guys. Haha. Could be more exaggerated than this though. So how do we take a number so arc10 looks like this, right? Wow. And how do we get there sooner? We could take the square of it. No, because this part is negative. So take the cube of it, maybe. Wait, no, that'll bring it in tighter. So we need to take the square roots, the cube roots. I'm not sure because this thing is a negative. I'm sure trial and error won't hurt me. Just gonna guess a number and see. That didn't do what I intended. Oh dear. Okay. So this is currently between 0 and 1. Oh, that's why. No, it's not. It's between -1 and 1. Or is it? Oh, maybe that was the reason. I'm very confused. Remind me what this does. So it's 0.3. As it get longer, get smaller. As it gets smaller, it does tend to there. So this is between 0 and 1. Really? Oh, this is why. Okay. Because my distance is always positive, I guess. So I need to take this whole thing, divide it by 2, and then add 1, I think. How often do you put comments in for yourself or others? How often do I comment my code? Very seldom. The way I try to think about things is to keep my code really easy to understand because of just naming things or keeping like easy things together and just not let it reach the point where it needs comments. So I sort of put in comments when something that I'm doing doesn't actually make sense. Like I'm putting in magic numbers. I might say, hey, well, in fact, then I should name my numbers too. But it's like if something is a blatant hack or doesn't make sense, and I sort of want to remind myself why I did something a bad way, then I might put comments in. But I'm very much not a programmer, so don't necessarily listen to that advice. Robbie says I'm a liar. which means that you should listen to the advice. Okay, Robbie says I'm a programmer. Robbie's also a liar. um. Why am I Rambo today? Um, because you got me. Yeah, put a bit of spinach inside. Why are you? Am I just? Was in the first place? Okay. Oh. Well, okay, that's not what I wanted. I want this. Y is 1 minus. Oh. Oh, I see. So. You could always add a factor onto the distance. Yes, could. I think. I'm just sort of confused because I feel like it's accelerating inward, and I don't know if that's actually what I want. Like, the further I go out, the slower it tends to 0, which is correct, and then as I go in, like, it seems to accelerate. It doesn't sort of slow in this way either, which is the feeling of the curve that I want. Maybe. Oh, maybe the shape that I want here isn't that one, it's more like this, which is what y equals. Maybe I need it to look more like this. Something like that. Oh, I see what you're saying, Ben. See what you're saying there. So this was actually worse than the A10 thing. Right. So I should just be like adding some or subtracting some factor to the x. Whatever the original length is. Something like that. Okay. Okay. Always add a factor onto the distance. And that was what you were saying in the first place. Yeah. Rambro's unfortunate winking is his winking at you. Minus something. Neutral. Or if that's enough. Hmm. To be fair, I guess this thing isn't going to be jumping so far. Or I could be wrong. But I guess he's not going to be jumping so far that he needs to stretch as much as that. So let's pick a maybe, so if his like ordinary, his unstretched length that, then I should sort of oh, so I would want this to end up being 1. To do that, I need these to average out. Which is sort of a pity. So I want something between negative 0.8, 1.65, where when he's in this position, it gives me a 0. Maybe I do want the gradient to increase. I don't know. I think that feels pretty good. Did all of these move? No, just the front. This is done. Okay. Guess that's it for the squash and stretch part. Oh boy. So now I want to do something where I have like lingering verts that just move after the object later on. And I have no idea. I have an idea of how to do it. It's just I've definitely never not done anything like this before, and so it's entirely possible that I'll run into problems, which is fine. Nick asks, so you're trying to make the dog stretch out and compress like spring? That would be correct. I think I'm pretty happy with that result. Okay, so the next part is if he moves around, you should remember where his verts were in the previous frame, read a noise texture, and then delay the vert movement. So I've definitely seen people do this before, and the way they've done it is that they are just using primitives, and so instead of keeping track of where the verts are, they just say, hey, this thing moved, this thing was here, and it moved this amount in the previous frame, and that because it's a primitive, then all of these verts should have moved the same distance. So it's like you don't have to keep track of each vert, you just have to keep track of one primitive, and then you can update that value, which is fine if you're just using primitives. And to be fair, this is what this character is, but this is just like a prototype character, and I imagine the real one being less primitive. So I'm gonna try to do it differently. I could just manually keep track of verts, I guess, but that's like a little scary. How many verts are there? Suppose if I just tell myself the characters won't be very complicated, then I can just keep track of all of them on the CPU. Alternatively, I could write all of these positions into a texture and then look them up later. Okay, I think I'll do the CPU version because if I can see it working and I get it to feel okay, and if it's lagging, then I'll do the other way. So Nick asks, what about using motion vectors? Huh. That's interesting. So it'd be similar to doing motion blur, but to keep it sort of stylized, instead of just blurring things fairly uniformly, you give it like a you give it like a some sort of noise kernel or something so that the pixels don't all motion blur at the same speed. I feel like that would not. Could it work? So I've had a bunch of problems with using like a screen-based motion blur before, and the main reason is that for for snappy movements, you end up having um like you're still distorting a 2D image, and sometimes you just don't have data there. So you're typically blurring both ways, and you end up I don't know, it looks bad to me sometimes. How does he do it, huh? Yeah, so he's doing it with just the position of the primitive. So what happens if this thing rotates? Like if it's an arm, is that the effect I'm trying to achieve? Yes, just not with primitive offset only, because the way that I imagine these things moving has more rotation in it. Um, Although, if I built my character out of separate pieces like this and hid that they were separate pieces because they were all like lit using that, like they didn't have lighting, maybe I could get away with it. Cool. Thanks, Chris Wade. Let's work off of this and see where we get. pretty cool. So if we have something long, like an arm, if we move it this way, and if we move it this way, there's nothing. So we need to keep track of its previous rotation as well. Never used a cue before. Previous rotation. Do I store that as a rotation or as a matrix? Probably as a matrix. So then okay, I shouldn't need this one, should I? I don't think so. I think this one, the camera just gives me. Hmm. World offset should only be behind swing. I don't know what that means. So I'm just gonna copy this thing. Oh, I think I understand. Is that why he kept them separate? Hmm. Hmm. I see. Okay, let's use that same logic then, I think. Evavac Evav Actress 29. Hello. So definitely working as intended. Oh dear. Also, this little person, not so much either. Should be point. Point 38-ish. What am I making? In the chat, Ben McInnes links this thing, which is like a smear effect for when you move primitives around. And it looked pretty cool, but if you have an arm swinging because you've got like a little character with a long neck and arms or legs, and those move around quickly, or he rotates around quickly, then you don't get that smear. So I'm trying to add the smear into it too. But also I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm figuring it out as I go along, which is usually what I do every day. I don't know if I'm seeing anything at all anymore. Hmm. Will you not get the smear effect during rotation? Just move the pivot point from the center. Move the pivot point from the center. Not sure. Don't know what you mean there. Move it from the center. You mean like have the pivot near one side of the cylinder? Because okay. So I don't think that would work at all because I don't think that that the shader or this Chris's implementation keeps track of rotation at all. So just moving the pivot to the one side still means that you'll get the smear when you like just moving it around. But if you rotate it, then you still won't see anything. Although currently I've lost the smear during positions too. So yay. So my understanding so far, I think, is that world offset is just like the entire object moving around, and local offset is um, moving each vertex. Should that be per vertex now? Ugh. Oh, that's true. I should just... Okay, change this to what it was. So this, I think, should just give me the previous pivots rotation without vertices. But is that what I want here? Okay, so maybe... Whoa, that was pretty loud. Ha ha ha! Ah. Okay, and then now we put back the mask. And then it doesn't work. Okay. So if we do this again, still doesn't. Okay, so now we need to look into how it does its mask. Uh, hmm. So I used to think of its direction as being dot product between world offset and a local offset. Right. So how do I figure out which way I'm rotating? maybe don't. Maybe I just treat them as positions all the time. Might as well not use local offset if they're the same. Oh dear. Huh. Sort of strange because it works going the one direction and not truly, and then it going in the other direction. I see nothing. Need to think about this more. Drawing diagrams. So there's the direction that the object is moving. And then there's the direction of the movement of the verts. Okay, but in the case of using rotation, sure, how would you keep track of that? Was he just using local offset? Local offset is kind of just like normals. Okay. Hmm. $78. That shouldn't. this is a 3. Oh, fail. Small. Oh, 3 by 5. Okay. Ah. Hmm. Why is the mask not giving me what I want? Dot. Ah. Hmm. So strangely, if I rotate, I need like the opposite thing to when I move. That doesn't make sense. Right, if you don't clamp it, it goes too far. So this is the direction from the previous one to the new one. So from the previous one to the new one. Okay, draw this again. So if this thing should smear that way, then the direction is this way. And then the dot product for these verts should be negative. And that would be correct. So why don't I see anything? Why don't I see anything then? It's 20 minutes later, 23 minutes later, after Ben suggesting if you move the pivot point from the center, I feel like if you moved it from the center of this object, you wouldn't get any difference. But if you made like a fake parent game object and you rotate that one, then it would work, but the entire object would smear at the same strength. Which, you know, maybe it just does that. Okay, so like a sphere, you probably wouldn't see it anyway, but you'd end up with it'd smear based on how much the sphere's pivot moves. So if this part of the mesh, if it's rotating, this shouldn't move so much, but if this moves a lot, then this will smear a lot too. So, I mean, your idea is actually really good. Really, really good. Maybe if I don't manage to figure it out, I'll just end up doing that. What if you smeared based on distance from direction of motion? So if it's just straight up distance, maybe that wouldn't work so great, because in the case of like this thing rotating, the part that's closer to the pivot should smear less, and the part that's further away should smear more, but both of these are the same distance from the pivot. So I guess you'd need like another position to say, hey, this is the distance we should be comparing to. Oh, yeah, I mean, if we add another position to compare to, then I suppose that would make it work. Sure, I really don't feel like these should be fixed. So I'm just gonna do this. Um, oh no, that was a really good idea. I'm actually gonna run with it and see where it takes me. Um, feel you on the being tired thing. So pivot position. Just double check that that would actually. Oh. I'm trying to see if the smear looks linear or if it has rotation. But it's really hard to see because this noise seems to be random. So that each frame it changes. Probably change how the noise works. Puppy petting break. Yeah. I think I'm gonna call it there. Pretty tired. Uh, thanks for joining.